How much would you be willing to spend to save your own life? The life of a loved one? How do we determine the cost to rid a life of debilitating diseases? For many, the price is raised too high to even fathom affording, and if they should try, they may be giving up the chance to pay for things such as cars, phones, or houses. But how is this happening in the U.S.? If we can all recognize the problem, how is this still occurring? The answer lies within the pharmaceutical industry and the continued support provided to it by the United States government. The overall cost of pharmaceutical drugs has skyrocketed in the United States in recent years. Between 2013 and 2015, despite the overall health budget in the United States increasing by 11%, spending on prescription medications increased by a whopping 20%. This increase in cost of prescribed drugs has only led to economic hardships for those who are dependent on these drugs. The cost of drugs in the United States has not always been so high. Only in recent years has the cost of many drugs begun to increase. One example of this huge hike in drug prices is shown in the case of the EpiPen, which cost $57 in 2007, but is now sold at prices of more than $500. EpiPens are essential for people who face serious allergies to different substances, as anaphylactic shock can quickly kill a person. Inability to access an EpiPen can result in disaster in the case of an emergency. Gilead Sciences generated $10 billion in 2014 from their hepatitis C pill, which cost $1,000 per pill and $84,000 to $110,000 per treatment in the U.S. $1,000 is a lot of money to spend, and having to pay that for a single pill is a struggle for many families. There is also a great disparity in the cost of medicine in the United States of America versus in other nations. This is highlighted by the cost of this same pill in India, which is sold for $4 per pill, at a cost that people can afford. Ann Glusker, a medical librarian for the University of Washington, pointed out the flaws that come with the patchwork system of insurance, such as the one in the United States. It leaves a large portion of the population who require specific or multiple types of medicine without the drugs they need, as a lot of them can't afford these medications at all or are not covered for a specific drug. Because they have the final say on what medicines they are willing to pay for, insurance companies hold complete control over what they will provide their members with financially. Even the insured can't shield themselves from rising prices, as more costly medications are being placed on tiers with a much higher copay, which is the portion paid for directly by the client. This means that over time, as the medication cost continues to rise, even insurance will not be able to offset the huge price tags enough to make medications accessible. Amit Sarpatwari, instructor at Harvard Medical School and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health in Boston, states that the higher the cost of the medication, the poorer the adherence to the medication because people can't afford to take their medicines. Big companies have set an agenda to sell as much of their product as they can for as high a price as possible, and it is easy to jack up the prices of a product if the company holds a monopoly over it. Pharmaceutical companies often claim to raise their prices due to the cost of testing, but the cost of testing is much lower than the addition of cost to the final prices. Because of these monopolistic practices, pharmaceutical companies often have higher total profits than big tech companies. Lobbying for prices has been especially effective in the U.S., where Big Pharma is seeing some of the greatest profits based on government policies in place and the huge population spending on drugs, as well as the power huge pharmaceuticals hold in the U.S. In 2013, the 10 leading pharmaceutical companies had an average income of $44 billion each. The constant stream of support for Big Pharma from our government creates an environment in which the people we have entrusted with powerful positions are seemingly exploiting their power for money. It creates distrust between the people and the government and places a higher value on money than it does on human lives. The pharmaceutical industry's high drug prices and the United States government's continued support of Big Pharma create inaccessibility to the medicine that people need to survive and thrive. This system disproportionately affects people based on their socioeconomic status. To create a society where everyone has access to the medication they need, we must strive to make more people aware of this injustice, create a universal healthcare provider, and allow more drugs to be certified as generic after conclusive testing. No one should have to choose between their immediate survival or extended survival. Yet this is reality for some. Without a universal insurance plan that protects the people, big business is also just as capable of exploiting those who are able to pay for insurance as it can exploit those who aren't able to. The best forms of change come from the government. If we are able to elect a group that will bring forth a system as close to universal health care as possible, then things may change. Big Pharma has such an enormous influence in the government that this is not all that is needed, but it is how we will get closer to the system where everyone can get the medicines they need to survive. However, this universal health care would increase the costs of taxes, and hospitals would be more crowded. These negatives do not offset the fact that everyone would be able to get the medication they need, saving countless lives. Universal health care would give the American people a sense of security in the case of medical emergencies, or in a simple checkup. Getting more generic drugs on the market would also serve to reduce the costs of medical expenses for the population of the United States. This would provide the U.S. market with a variety of drugs that are chemically the same as brand name drugs, with all the same results, for cheaper. The FDA requires the same amount of safety precautions for generic and brand name drugs, and while generic drugs do contain fillers and dyes, every drug, generic or brand name, contains these. Generic drugs are also rarely complex drugs, like neurological treatments. Instead, they tend to be simpler medications for diseases that are often more widespread. This can be changed if more drugs are produced to serve a wider array of diseases, as generic medicines become more prevalent in each part of the pharmaceutical community. Everyone should be given the opportunity to strive for recovery without an enormous price tag, to strive for a life without a constant, overwhelming medical threat, to live life to the fullest, to live.